Hey, Lynn. That Penny? Penny, hey, Winfred.
Everything is set. Good. You know how to unmute, right?
Hey, Tim. Right, good morning and welcome to the Juror's Critique of the 44th Montgomery Art Guild exhibition at Montgomery Museum of Fine Arts with Dr. Wendy Castenell, Assistant Professor of African American Art at the University of Alabama. As we speak, the exhibition is now open to the public, and we would like to thank its sponsors, Alicomp, Elizabeth Crump, and Laura and Barry Harmon, and co-sponsors, Dan Harris, Montgomery County Commission, Ann Hubbard, Lucy and Hans Luquire, Renaissance Bank, and Paula and Nelson Smith. On behalf of my friend and colleague, Dr. Jennifer Jankowskis, who wishes she could be with us today and worked with the Juror on the stunning exhibition, it's my pleasure to welcome Dr. Castenell, who earned her PhD in American Art and Visual Culture from the University of Missouri. Prior to heading to the capstone, she taught at Alabama State, and her research focuses on African American art, portraiture, gender studies, representations of race and ethnicity in American visual culture, film history and theory, and cross-cultural contact. Her current book project is Creole Identity and the Art of the American South, Louisiana from the Colonial Era to Reconstruction. Dr. Castenell serves on the board of the 19th Century Studies Association, as well as the Journal Global 19th Century Studies. So the way we have organized today's talk, we are going to take 3 breaks. So we're going to look at 3 paintings and then take a break, several photos and other varied media and take a break, and then 3 three-dimensional works and take a break. So we will ask you to save your questions until those break moments. And when we do break, we are going to stop sharing the slides so we can all see each other and talk together. Looking forward to hearing from Dr. Castenell.
Thank you. I'd like to start by thanking the Montgomery Art Guild for inviting me to jury the 44th annual show. It was a real pleasure, and as you heard from my bio, my specialty is 18th and 19th century art, so it was a lot of fun looking at contemporary art, especially local contemporary art. Some of the artists I knew, some of them I knew and I didn't know that I knew them, and some of them were completely new to me, so that was a lot of fun. I especially want to thank the Montgomery Museum of Fine Arts for hosting the exhibition, and Jennifer Jankowskis and Sarah Gray. Help was invaluable as I worked through the jurying process over the past several months. I absolutely could not have done it without them. I'd also like to thank Alice Novak, who kindly stepped in at the last minute due to unforeseen circumstances to run today's program. And most of all, I'd like to thank all the artists who submitted work this year. It was thrilling to see the array of local talent and to be introduced to new artists and reintroduced to some old favorites. So thank you all for all of your hard work. And now if we can start the slideshow, we can get right into comments. I wanted to start with work by Ryan Akers, Pentecost, from 2020, Mixed Media on Canvas. And this is the work that I selected as the overall winner. I remember when I was looking at the works in the database, which, everything is the same size and scale when you're looking at things online. So the dimensions were listed, but I have no idea. I don't understand dimensions unless I see it. So it looked like it could be big, but I didn't know. But what I was struck by was like the texture of the unstretched canvas and the expressiveness of the application of the paint, and the interesting composition. And it all recalled for me the long tradition of self-taught Southern artists. So it seemed to be both, rooted in the past, rooted in art history, which I love as an art historian, but also very much in the present. And as Alabama is in the Bible Belt, so its reference to religion I found to be also interesting, like kind of linked to the past, but also the title and the way that he included the $ for the S in Pentecost. I thought that was intriguing, and it added another layer of meaning, like to the work, and it seemed to be critical in a more contemporary way of the way that the church, not just the Pentecostal church, even though that is like the title, but all faiths really kind of become implicated, especially maybe in poor rural communities, of almost extorting money, tithing from its members, and how that creates, especially in poor rural communities, how it creates kind of this dissection between the church with all of its money and not necessarily providing help for the community and the poor people who are giving to the church. Now, I don't know if this is what Ryan intended with this work. This is just what I read into it and some of the reasons that I liked it. And when I went into the gallery to walk through the exhibition, and I'm gonna say this over and over again because this struck me throughout my, tour of the show. The size and scale of the work just made it even more impactful. Again, everything seems really small and equal in size, and you can imagine what things look like. But I kind of tend to imagine things as what all kind of, I don't know, standard portrait size, because that's what I'm so used to working on, perhaps. So seeing it so big really like struck me. I loved it. It was the first thing I saw when I entered the gallery, and it reached out and grabbed my attention. And it's funny because Ryan is a graduate student at the University of Alabama. He's new. And everybody for the past year has been telling me, you have to meet Ryan. You have to meet Ryan. He's great. You'll love his work. And I have never met Ryan. And I missed his grad review because I was, I had another meeting. So I had no idea what his work looked like. And of course, this is a blind review, so I didn't know whose work this was. And it was the first thing that really stood out for me when I was going through the work. So I guess I really should meet Ryan. All right, we can move to the next work. This one by Sunny Palk, and if y'all are here and I'm mispronouncing your names, please correct me. I don't want to get it wrong. Stay focused and mind your own business, from 2019 acrylic on canvas. It's not specifically Southern. I tried to organize this discussion by both medium and theme. So this work isn't particularly Southern, but African-American culture is so rooted in the South because of, the history of enslavement, that the subject of the portrait kind of linked it to Southern art for me in a way. My own scholarship focuses on portraiture. And so I was incredibly excited by the number of submissions to the exhibition that were portraits. And I would have been remiss not to talk about one of those portraits in this critique. This one I found to be striking because of the way the profile of the portrait, which is, a very interesting layout, is not really the format that you are accustomed to see in traditional portraiture. Usually you get like the nice 3/4 view. But also her hair, her natural hair that kind of took over the canvas and was such a focal point against the nice peach background. I love the color that elevated it from like a traditional portrait with kind of like just a blank neutral backdrop. Adding that little bit of color was a nice counterpoint. The profile made her demeanor seem to be introspective, which makes sense given the title. And again, like maybe I was influenced in my assumptions about the portrait based on the title. Like that often sways you when you are trying to analyze works, I think. But also, I think that representation matters. And this is one of those works that I felt really accomplished that goal. It is so important to try to invest and draw BIPOC community into engagement with fine arts, into the museum, and this work is a way to do that because of how it represents this young Black woman with natural hair, especially at a time when natural hair, we see it all the time, often gets criticized. It's unprofessional, it's not appropriate, and so shining a light on it and focusing on the beauty of the sitter's hair, I thought was so important. And if you see yourself represented, your culture represented on the walls of a gallery or a museum, you are more likely to think that that space is for you and come to it. And that's an important way to get more African-American artists, but also more African-American, not just African-American, BIPOC community engagement across the board is by, having more representation. And if anybody's seen the recent HBO documentary, I'm not gonna remember the name, about Black art, then you know that only about 2% of museum collections are devoted to African-American art, which is shockingly small in 2021. I had no idea. I would have guessed that the statistic was a lot higher. It is not. So I loved the many works in the exhibition that featured African-American faces, culture, and that was just one that I found to be stunning. If we move on to Steve Spencer's work after Jazz Fest lets out. Now this one is pretty personal. I'm a native New Orleanian. Jazz Fest is my jam. I unfortunately have not been in a long time because it always falls during like finals week. So I can never get away as a grad student or as faculty to actually go to the Jazz Fest. It's been a long time, but it was always one of my favorite events. My dad was a jazz musician. My uncle is a jazz musician. So again, this was very personal to me. But beyond just like that personal connection that I felt to it, I also love that it was rooted in Southern culture. I love that it gave just a dynamic sense of space, an urban Southern community. And the way that the painting evokes sound. I love that. I love that. That's a whole new, well, I guess it's pretty new field of art history where you talk about not just the formal aesthetic qualities of the visual elements, but also like how sound can be evoked in art, which is obviously silent. Most times there's a sculpture that has audio, which is really cool as well, but most times works of art are silent. But this one you could hear not only the brass band, but also the hubbub of the crowds on the street. Due to the kind of jumbled composition, the use of the bright colors, the focus on the what do you call it? brass band in the center of the image. And I loved it. It reminded me of home. It reminded me, I could hear the second line music. It just reminded me of the energy, the culture of New Orleans. And yeah, and for all those reasons and more, I was really drawn to this work in particular. All right, and is this the place where we're meant to stop and have our first discussion or questions?
Yes.
I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm kind of, I'm cognizant of the time. So if I seem like I'm kind of rushing through my comments, that's why.
And two of the first three artists are here. Sunny is here and Ryan is here, although I think Ryan may just miss the discussion of his work.
Ryan. I was saying, everybody's been telling me for so long to meet you, and I haven't had a chance to meet you before, and I missed your grad review because I had another appointment. So I didn't know this was your work, and I was immediately drawn to it. So I guess like it is about time that we meet. So,
so do you think that we're living in a renaissance of Southern art at the moment?
Yes, absolutely. And I think the number of submissions to this show is one of the indicators of that. There were over 400, almost 450 submissions. And I'm talking about really, really great work. It was so hard to choose the final works that would actually appear in the exhibition because of the high quality and high standards of so many of the submissions. And that's just, Alabama. I mean, I don't know how far and wide submissions came from. That's not in the database. That's not information that I'm privy to, but I assume that it is mostly local artists. But you see that in galleries and gallery spaces all across the South. And you also see that in scholarship. There's a lot more interest in focusing on Southern art by art historians, past and present, historic Southern art as well as contemporary Southern art. A colleague of mine is working on an edited volume on 19th century Southern art at this moment, which there's almost nothing written on Southern art from the 19th century. The focus so long in American art has been the Northeast. And so that kind of interest in the history of Southern art, but also in contemporary art making, I think that's what it is. There've always been lots of Southern artists. So a renaissance of Southern art, maybe not in that all of a sudden there are all these new Southern artists on the scene, but they are not being ignored.
So does anyone have any questions about these great examples? Yes, Warren, please.
Well, I just wanted to interject based on something Wendy asked about the composition of the artists. The vast majority of the artists are from Alabama. There were a few from out of state, but the vast majority are from Alabama. So that's really interesting. And also the Montgomery Art Guild is going to attempt at a later date to involve some of the winning artists in art talks. So we can actually talk with them one-on-one a little bit more about their work and who they are and how they've come to do what they do. So everybody should just keep an eye out for that announcement at some point in the future.
I know I will. That's great.
And any questions about those three works or the comments before we resume looking?
I've got just a general question.
Okay.
I wondered if you saw any common threads or themes through the submittals and the art. And per our discussion of Southern art, do you see emerging trends within Southern art that are noteworthy?
I saw a lot of focus on Southern landscapes. which I thought was really interesting across media. And that was
Mhm.
good to see. It's harder to tell with abstract art, and I try to have like a good mix of abstract and representational art in the show. So it's hard to tell, that's not necessarily rooted in Southern art, except that the artists themselves are Southern. But there was also another trend that I saw. There were a lot of works that commented on this past year, commented on the pandemic, commented on especially African American culture, but just a diverse culture in the South, which I thought was really, really incredible to see. And I wanted to focus as much as possible on that as well. So.
Okay, thank you, Nancy. So we have completed the painting section, and now we're going to move on to some varied media.
Okay, great. Starting with an example of what I just said, talking about Southern landscapes. This work by Emily Thomas, which is called Untitled Napoleonville, Louisiana from 2019. I didn't need to know that it was Napoleonville, Louisiana. Like, I'm not really familiar. I'm a New Orleanian, if you know us, we don't really like, what is Louisiana except New Orleans? I don't even know. It's just kind of our attitude towards the state, which is, kind of sad. So I don't think I've ever even been to Napoleonville, Louisiana. I don't know it, but I didn't need to know the exact location to know that this image was Southern. And it reminded me a lot of the photography of William Christenberry, who's one of my favorites, and the way that he kind of documents these old buildings within Southern landscapes and breathes new life into them in that way. I also liked, I don't know what you call it, I kept thinking post-production because it's my, my film background, digital manipulation of the image to kind of emphasize the shadows and the atmospheric quality of the photographs. The live oaks that kind of cover and frame the old barn. That to me, it spoke of the oldness, I don't know, like the timelessness of the South and rural Southern landscapes, but also put us firmly in the present, because the how large the trees are, for example, shows how long they have grown there. The fact that this barn, I don't know if that's a barn, this building it looks to be old and, not dilapidated, it's well cared for, but ivy growing over it shows the age of it, but also how it is still very contemporary. And especially in comparing it to works of urban Southern culture, like the Jazz Fest painting, this seemed to be like a nice juxtaposition, because you get like the vibrancy, but also here you get kind of the more laid back nature of Southern culture. And I love that, the lushness of the landscape as well. It couldn't be anywhere but the South, wherever in the South is. You don't find landscapes like this up north. I've lived in Massachusetts, I've lived in Missouri. Like, this is distinctively Southern, and I love the way that all of these lush elements kind of framed this building that really situated in a specific region, a specific space. You didn't need to see people or anything else. The image told the entire story, and I just thought it was also haunting and beautiful and atmospheric. So we can move to the next one. This is another type of photograph that I saw quite a few examples of, and I loved it. I'm here for it. This work, the way that it captures light, the way that they're using, artists like Kay Brummel is using photography to create these interesting abstract images, I thought was phenomenal. And maybe I'm just ignorant about contemporary photography, But this was new and interesting, and it seemed to be kind of like a cutting edge thing, especially since I saw so many examples of just this kind of image. I love the way she managed to capture the reflection of the light on this background. And also there's another example of a work that I loved it when I saw it online, but it was completely transformed and became even more astonishing and wonderful seeing it in person. And it wasn't even lit at the time. It was, you know, it was mounted, it was hung on the wall, but it wasn't lit yet. But the way the natural light in the gallery space reflected off of the metallic paper, it really emphasized the light in the image. And that's another form of art that I find to be fascinating. I saw at the Birmingham Museum of Art an exhibition by an Indigenous artist that featured light, maybe 2 years ago, that featured light as a changing, moving object as a part of the exhibition. I also saw another, I wish I could remember these artists or the names of the shows, like that is gone from my head, so don't ask me. I also saw, when I was visiting London a few years ago, another exhibition by an artist that was about light. That was the featured quality of light, the three-dimensional qualities of light, the way light moves through the space at different times of day. And I felt like this photograph and the few other examples that were similar, I just found it really provocative and interesting, and I loved it, especially again in person with the metallic paper. We moved. Here's another one that really, I loved it when I saw it online. I love a triptych. I mean, that kind of reference to the history of art, give it all to me. I love it. The way that it's abstract, but also kind of references a landscape. And maybe that's because of the mosaic, because of the use of these natural materials, or just the forms. I'm not sure. It reminded me of kind of a landscape, but it's not, obviously. There's no reference to landscape. It's called Thread of Life. Yeah, it could be. It's, it's completely abstract, non-representational. But again, seeing it in person, and this one was not hung, it was not lighted. It, didn't have all of, it wasn't in a place for public viewing yet. And yet it was completely transformed by seeing it in person, even as it was on the floor, on one of the museum mats, the natural light, the way it reflected off of the marble and glass and slate materials of the mosaic was gorgeous. It's a lot smaller than I imagined, which just made it more intimate. I swear I wanted to get down on my hands and knees and get up close to really see it. I didn't do that because I have a bad hip, but I was bent double trying to get as close to it. It drew me in. And then I wanted to step back and also look at the composition as a whole and see the play of light across the surface of the image. It was phenomenal. It is phenomenal. And I love, this is another thing that I saw a lot of, this use of interesting, unusual media, materials. There was a lot of that throughout, not just throughout the exhibition, but amongst the submissions. It was not all traditional painting, sculpture, drawings. There was some of that, and it was wonderful, but there were lots of examples of work that kind of were more off the beaten path in terms of, and unexpected in terms of the materials used. And this is an example of that. And it was very provocative. It also reminded me of 1970s design, which is kind of nostalgic. Maybe it's the colors or the blocks of materials used to create the mosaic. I don't know, but it's incredible. Another example of a different kind of medium. Here, Sarah Marshall is a colleague of mine at UA, and I admit this one I did recognize. I knew her work. I mean, she's we're in the same department, but I've always been a huge fan of her work since I first saw them. I love eyes. That's so weird. I know. I can't explain it. I love eyes. That's the one thing that I doodle. If you see any notebook of mine, I probably have an eye drawn somewhere on the page. Always have. And I recently was introduced to the portraits of eyes from like the 18th and 19th century that were like mementos for loved ones, which I almost just died when I learned that those existed. Phenomenal. So works like this really like it intrigued me and enticed me because of the repeating image of eyes on them. Like, I really do feel like eyes are a window to the soul. You learn so much about a person. You're drawn into a person by their eyes. And so that, first of all, I found wonderful. But also the use of quilt making as a material. There were so many textiles amongst the submissions, which just like was the most exciting thing ever for me. First of all, I love textiles because of the way they kind of reclaim, what has traditionally been considered craft or women's work, and assert its position as fine art. I find that exciting. And so, especially when you're talking about quilt making, which has for so long been, relegated to women or relegated to the African-American community. I mean, Sarah is not African-American, but, just to kind of put a fine point on it. And then to elevate it to fine art, I think it is always interesting. Like, but also it recalls this history, this long tradition of Southern art making as well. And you think of things like Gee's Bend, but also, just the tradition of women quilting in the South and, repurposing things, like taking found materials that were worn out and giving it new life, which is why I love quilt making. But then you combine it with silk screen print, screen print, and idea of printing on this fabric. And I also love when artists give me a combination of text and image, because when you are able to read the text, and I don't even ask me to do it right now, my eyes are far too bad. I can't recall what the word said. I looked at it in the gallery, but I can't make it out on the screen. It's far too small. But when artists give me that combination of text and image, text always slightly alters how we understand the image. So you get like the first impression of the work just on a visual basis, and with the composition, the colors, the arrangement. But then when you get up close and you read what the text says, it can completely transform the work. And this is another case of that. And I thought it was wonderful. And I just want to say, like, included in the show, there were also, like I said, there were several textile works. It was embroidery, as well as the quilt making, and also just textile design, which was really exciting.
So thank you. And I know Enid is here, and don't know if any of the other artists from that section were here, but does anyone have any questions or comments?
I have a question.
Uh-huh.
This is a general question. We had a long discussion, an art talk discussion in the Montgomery Art Guild about how you prepare for a show like this. How do you prepare for submissions for exhibit? And I just wonder if you, as a person who, with your extensive background and also the number of curatorial things that you've done, if you have any suggestions or ideas or thoughts about how artists across all medium might think through this question. Some of us thought, well, you need to take a look at the juror and what their, what their areas of interest are or what they've studied. Others said, no, you should really submit your strongest work. It was a very interesting discussion, and I just wonder if you might have any thoughts to add to that bubbling little pot.
That's a great question. I'm not sure. Like, I think probably, I would say to focus on submitting what you consider to be your strongest work, what showcases your personality as an artist, what speaks for you as an artist most profoundly. Because when I was looking through the works, yeah, of course, like there were some things that made it into the show that were very specific to my preferences. Like, you know, I love eyes, or I love portraits. And so like I tried to represent them, but I tried not to focus solely on my own personal interests, but rather to be as inclusive as possible. I wanted to create like a really diverse show. I wanted the exhibition to feature lots of media, like, you know, I wanted all the media to be represented. I wanted to have a nice combination of naturalistic and abstract works, non-representational works. I wanted landscape and still life and, you know, portraits and, you know, just everything. And so I tried to be very mindful of creating like this balanced exhibition and not just, you know, choosing one kind of work. And sometimes that was really hard. Like I said, there were so many great submissions, and, you know, maybe if the selection would have been weaker, I wouldn't have been able to do that. It would have just been like, okay, these are the things that I like and I'm drawn to and I want to include them, because these are the only ones that are, you know, good. But there were across the board just wonderful examples of all that I was looking for. I also wanted to focus strongly and heavily on student work. I mean, the first time I went through the database with all the images, I tried not to notice who was a student, you know, what the media were. I just looked, what do I like? It was a long list and it was all things that I liked. And then I tried to like whittle the list down, again, to include as many media as possible and as many types of works as possible to make it inclusive. And then I wanted to make sure, lastly, that, you know, I had all of the categories that were meant to, you know, receive specific prizes covered, like student work. But at that point, I figured out that a lot of the works that I already selected were student works, and that made me really happy, because I think for students, they should be, you know, get this feather in their cap. They should have this line to add to their CVs as they are emerging artists, and they should be encouraged to continue along this path. So I was really excited about that, but I didn't start off by saying, oh, let me choose this number of student works and this number of sculptures. I just, you know, gravitated towards works that I liked and then tried to be as diverse as possible in my selections. So that makes me, again, that makes me think that you should just submit your strongest work to a show like this, because while it's always subjective too. What's gonna appeal to me might not be as appealing to someone else, but you can't necessarily tell the number of abstract works that are included in this exhibition, for example. Like, you wouldn't necessarily think that I would be drawn to that, but I love abstraction. You don't find that in my scholarship, but I love it. And so I tried to be kind of heavy-handed with that as well. So I wouldn't cater to the juror necessarily.
Other questions from that section, or other general questions? Wendy, with the documentary you referenced in the discussion of Sonny's portrait, was it black art in the absence of light that just came out?
Yeah, thank you. I know it's like black art and light. So I never remember the title. I'm just bad at titles and names and things like that.
That's a must watch, isn't it?
It is so great. If you have HBO Max or have someone you can bootleg HBO Max from, I highly, highly recommend it. It is amazing.
Okay, are we ready for the next section, the final section?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Three-dimensional art. Again, there was so many 3D objects that were submitted. Lots of wonderful ceramics, lots of sculptures, lots of I don't either kind of mixed media, three-dimensional works. I don't know if we would even call installations, I guess. And they were diverse in style and subject and just really great across the board. And I included a lot more 3D works than I assumed that I would, like when I went into during the show, because I do, my work is more focused on 2D, and sculpture is a little scary to talk about for me sometimes, somehow. I don't know why. So I didn't expect to be so drawn to so many 3D works, but I was. And this work in particular, like just seeing it online, I imagined it to be really small and intimate, and like I didn't understand what traditional Korean traditional paper. I didn't know what that was. I didn't know what hanji was. I couldn't imagine, like, I thought maybe it was paper mache or something. And I just like, oh, wow, this is the incredible detail, this, cultural event that is outside of me, but also really interesting and really cool. I liked it. Then when I saw it in the exhibition, and if you haven't gone to the show and walked through the exhibition yet, please get yourself there, because again, these slides, they're wonderful, but they do not do the works justice. They're so much better in person. This is pretty big. It's way bigger than I imagined. And it sent me on a whole rabbit hole. Like, I can't tell you the number of YouTube videos I watched about hanji, and I just wanted to know as much as possible about this medium. This is not paper mache. It is all sculpted. I don't even understand how. Sculpted out of this traditional Korean paper that is really resilient somehow. It just lasts forever. That's an overstatement, obviously, but there are examples of hanji paper from the 16th century that is almost in pristine condition. I don't know, it's like magic. It is, every single detail is visible in this sculpture on such a small scale. And when you see it in person, it is breathtaking. The hair, the different textures of the clothes, the banners, the little mats around the circle, I don't know what those are called, for the wrestling. It was stunning. And I could not believe the technical skill of it. I loved the material. I loved everything about this work. Again, I love the introduction to this new cultural event. I have never heard of Seya Reum, and I might be, forgive me if I am butchering the name, but I have never seen or heard of Korean wrestling. So this was new to me. I also had to do like research on that. I was like, what is this? And it just lit my curiosity, and I was astonished and amazed by the technical skill that was involved in creating this. And also, again, representation matters. And I was really excited that a Korean culture was able to be represented here, and that there is such a really, not a big community, but a community of Korean artists working in Montgomery. I had no idea. I mean, I lived in Montgomery for 3 years. I had no idea. And so through this work, on Google, I was able to find out that there is this community of Korean artists in Montgomery and across the South. And I love that this was represented, like the South is not a monolith. And I'm always telling people this, and I love to focus on that, but it is not a monolith. And seeing the diversity of the South and Southern art was really interesting to me as well. And it's something that I really wanted to showcase in this exhibition. And this just fit. It just checked all the boxes for me. I love it. I don't know if the artist is here, but if they are, I would love to find out more, because I am just fascinated by the whole process. This is another work that I loved. I think formally it's really stunning, but also the underlying meaning is also really powerful. And like I said, one of the kind of sub themes that I noticed from a lot of submissions in this year's show was a kind of a focus on white supremacy, that tradition in the South on inequality, and this is just one of those examples, and done in a completely abstract way and using this mixture of media that was, you know, really, really great. The metal, the printed acrylic ink on the, well, I assume it's printed. It doesn't really say, but the patterns of the metal pieces are so precise that I assume that it's printed, but maybe it's not, maybe it's done by hand. I have no idea. And then these kind of doorknobs that in person, even up close, they appear to be rusted metal, like they were found objects, but they're not, they're ceramic. And so that was also fascinating. Again, the technical skill of so many of these artists was just outstanding. And then the lucite boxes that, especially this last one that is broken, you just get this sense of like disruption. It's completely abstract, but this is another example of the combination of text and image. Like once you know the title of the work, it completely transforms how you read and understand the work, I think. And visual, I mean, I was drawn to it even before I looked at the title, because this is what I always do. I look at the images and then I would later go back and click on the details about the work. So I didn't know the titles. Obviously, I don't know any of the artists when I'm judging the show. And selecting works, but I didn't know the materials, I didn't know the titles, I didn't know the sizes or anything when I first looked at them, and I was immediately drawn to this because of the formal qualities. But then after like reading the title, it became even more extraordinary to me because of the way, like the underlying meaning and how I could read that into the image. This is, you know, big, it's the size of the wall, and it really draws you in and it makes you question. I love works that lead you to ask questions and that don't have just kind of foregone conclusions. Like, this is the statement that I'm making, period. But here you are invited to interpret this in, you know, various ways, personal ways, and I love that. This is another great example of sculptural work that was submitted, and this one, again, it reminded me of the traditions of Southern art, and again, that long-standing tradition of self-taught Southern artists or artists who use found objects in creating sculptures. And this is an example of that. Steel, cast bronze, brass, and vintage tools, these are all found objects that were put together to create this overall sculpture. I know this because Jennifer Jankowskis told me, like, it is not apparent necessarily because I don't know what these tools are. So it's not necessarily apparent in looking at the image itself, but it creates this beautiful dynamic sculpture that invites you to go around it and see it from all angles. This hand in the middle, like, I don't know, it just intrigued me, like holding another object. I just found it fascinating, beautiful, interesting, the different textures of the materials, like the kind of rusted pipe that you have here, but combined with this polished brass circle. Again, kind of the rough, irregular shapes combined with this kind of smooth, sleek shape, I thought was also really interesting. And there were several sculptures that kind of recalled this kind of image, this kind of found object, mixed media, abstract sculpture. You see, I have a lot more difficulty talking about three-dimensional works. I don't know why. It's hard to verbalize for me, but I like it. That's all I can say. So
Okay.
again, thank all the artists, all of you for submitting works to the show. It was such a pleasure to jury the show. I had a great time, and there were so many wonderful pieces. And this PowerPoint is just an example of a few of the works that have made it into the exhibition that I loved. I mean, honestly, it was choosing the prize winners was so hard. You can ask Jennifer, like she thought we were going to, be in and out. No, I went through those galleries about a dozen times, because I loved all the works that I chose for the show. So it was really Sophie's choice trying to select prize winners. So if you did not get a prize, it's not because I didn't love your work. I could have gone to the gallery today and made a whole different selection. I don't know. It was so hard.
So we have time for more questions.
This isn't a question, I did put it in the chat, but I just want to thank you. You were very articulate. And even when you said you're not familiar and you're not comfortable talking about certain area, you still were very articulate. And I want to thank you for all that you did in putting this together.
Thank you, Lisa. That's really nice. I'm glad it made sense. Sometimes I wonder if a little jumbled.
And Sunny says thank you also.
I loved your work, Sunny. Thank you for contributing it.
I'd like to say thank you as well. I'm Nancy Jones. I'm a Florida artist, but I've lived in the South all my life and lived in Birmingham for a while. And I was just so thrilled to get a piece accepted and look at the show online. I'm going to come through Montgomery next week and get to see it in person.
Oh, I'm so happy to get that opportunity, especially being from out of state, because I promise you, it's great online. I'm glad that I love the way that museums have pivoted, during the pandemic to keep audiences and to keep community engagement in art. It's so clever, they've really done great things with online education and online exhibits and such. But there is nothing that compares to seeing art in person, as you as an artist know, and the exhibition is beautiful. And again, I saw it still in the process of being installed. So I didn't even see the finished product, and sadly I'm in Chicago, so I won't get to see the finished product. I'm glad you will though. Your work.
I'm looking forward to it, and thank you for your time and your thinking. It's always helpful to an artist to have reflections on the work and have a different set of eyes and opinions. It makes your art grow. It makes you think about it in a different way. And I think these regional opportunities are really important. And this has been a really important opportunity for me, and I really appreciate it.
Great. And that's good for me to hear as an art historian, because we often say art history is weird because we don't necessarily consider the artist, we consider the work and not necessarily the artist, which artists sometimes are confused by. But again, you can make a work, you can have something in your head and you put it out there, but then how do people interpret it when they see it? And you have no control over that. So that kind of level of control and what happens when you put the art out in the world and how people see and understand it and what they think about it is really interesting. That component of it, especially with contemporary art. So I'm glad that it is helpful to hear other people's interpretations of the work that might be very different from your own ideas.
True.
This is Enid. I'd also like to thank you. I have learned so much today. I've got a couple pages of your comments were really illuminating and educational, and also very humbled and very pleased to get a piece in the show. And I thought you might be interested to stick with that Southern art. Most of the stone came from Alabama.
Really?
I collect my own stone. Yeah, I go out into the field, and the field means out into the country in Alabama, and I collected most of, I'd say probably about 85 to 90% of the stone was from Alabama. And And so it really is, it's rooted in the South.
I
So
love it. Like the materials are like
Yeah,
foraged
yeah.
from the landscape itself. That is so
Mhm.
perfect.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
I loved it. I loved it. It was another one of those works that as I was going through the database initially, it just like grabbed me. And again, that was online. When I saw it in person, it was like, oh my God, I'm so glad that I chose this because it brought it to a whole different level. I loved it.
Appreciate that.
Well,
Thank
and
you,
Don-
Dr.
excuse me.
Thank you, Dr. Castenell.
Thank you, Phoebe. I loved your work too. Again, Phoebe was a former student of mine. She was my advisee. I'd never seen her work because I had her in art history classes, not studio art classes. And so I didn't know that it was yours. And in fact, I remember that your minor was computer science or something.
I was a double, triple, computer science, digital art, and photography.
Yeah. Okay, like that's why it was in my head. I was like, oh, paintings, like what? Phoebe Burns, maybe it's a different Phoebe Burns, I don't know, because I would not have expected you to be a painter. And your work, it was great. I love the expressive quality of the brushwork, the one with the lips with the cutout. Like again, that didn't register necessarily online, but when I saw it in person, I was like, wow, that makes it even more interesting. It was great. It's very nice to see your work after all these years.
Yeah, I have a solo exhibition next year, and I'm actually going to continue Black feminism for the Ain't I a Woman piece. So I'm continuing that.
That's exciting. I'm very proud of you. I have nothing to do with your career as an artist, but I'm still proud.
I mean, without you, I wouldn't have all these books about Black African American art.
Well, good. That's the point of African American art and why it's important. So thank you for confirming that for me.
And also from Tuscaloosa, Ryan is saying thank you, and that he's grateful for this opportunity. And Ryan, thank you for your kind words about our mission. And Donna is saying thank you, and that she can't wait to see it in person. And we are open today until 5, and then tomorrow from 12 to 5. I can't echo strongly enough how phenomenal, as someone else has said in the chat, the show is in person. I was so excited to get to walk through yesterday, getting ready to be with all of you today.
And I think we should, Jennifer Jankowskis could not be here today. She was a curator who worked with me throughout, the process of during the show. And she's the one who, organized and arranged the works, and her eye, it was just incredible. The way she organized the works just was it just added even more. Your works are beautiful, but the way she put them together it was so logical and made so much sense. It looked so great together. And it was really fascinating to see how she, came up with, to talk to her about how she came up with those arrangements. So I just want to thank her again for her hard work. And, Alice, you're real nice pinch hitting. That's so great. But yeah, Jennifer and Sarah Graves really sort of led me to help my hand and led me through the entire process. And I can't thank them enough.
Well, and Jennifer is such a great contemporary curator, and to feel this new energy of our own art community through both of your eyes and your wonderful collaboration is just splendid. So thank you, as all have said. It's really great. And we can't do anything without Sarah.
Oh my God. She really came through for me. It was, I had so many questions for her and needed so much help and guidance. And, she was a real trooper.
She is very dedicated and very thorough. She is a great colleague.
Alice, will this video be available for viewing as a recording on the museum site?
Yes, I'm not sure when it's going to post or where, but we have recorded it. So stay tuned and we will let you know, Warren.
Thank you.
And thanks for your comments too. Does anyone have anything else before we close?
I do. This is Janice.
Hey, Janice.
Hi. I just wanted to say, I think that in a way, the online jurors talk, it added something new, in my opinion. I've mainly been to, oops, now can you hear me? My microphone just got fixed. I love doing it online and focusing on a certain number of the pieces. I think in the past I've been to jurors talks where we kind of went around the museum and looked at or the exhibition and looked at the various pieces, and that also is interesting. But this focus on just these 9 pieces, and I think the online presentation made it more focused and more interesting in its own way. And the whole presentation was very engaging. Thank you, Dr. Castenell.
Thank you. And yeah, I agree, because it was for me overwhelming seeing all the works in the gallery. You want to talk about everything, but that's impossible. You have an hour. So focusing on a select number of works that kind of were representative of a larger body of the works in the show. I thought that was a great way to get around social distancing and to organize the critique. You know, I'm sure that people's works who weren't included, and again, it was a hard decision, like who do you include in the talk as, you know, representative of the show, might have wanted to hear words on their specific works, and I'm happy to answer them for you now if you have any. But it was a way to keep it like narrow and organized and to keep it from being overwhelming, I think. So again, thank you to the Montgomery Museum for, you know, organizing this. It was a great way to get around the you know, pandemic requirements.
Okay. Well, everyone, have a glorious day. We can't wait to see you in the galleries. Thank you, artists. Thank you, Wendy, and kudos to Jennifer. It was my great joy to get to fill in for her. See you all soon.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Mhm.
Bye.